here, everyone. I'm Jonathan, your teacher, coming to you live from always here at the Wassa studio in Sulaco. My name is Jonathan. I am a teacher for this course. It is Thursday, February the 23rd. We're at the end of week number 3 as we continue along with this term 2A. Again, this is PLAR History and Geography. Again, thanks so much for tuning in and listening live right here with us and everyone along as we continue looking at Canadian history. Our goal for today is that we will be continuing looking at lesson number 2 contents. We'll wrap up looking at Canada and Canada's contribution and involvement during the Second World War. And we'll wrap all that up. And at the end, we'll look at assignment number 5. So again, this is what we have in store for today. It's called the Canadian Shame. Continue on with lesson number 2 with World War II. But before we do all that, again, you can always get a hold of me at any point, any time, simply by giving me a phone call during my office hour at the office. It's 807-737-1488. Simply ask for Jonathan, the PLAR History Geography teacher, or you can type in my extension, which is 2221. Email, if you have email, whether it's Yahoo, Hotmail, Gmail, or whatever other accounts you have, you can email me at jho, jho at nnec.on.ca. I'm always on email. So again, you email me, I'll get back to you pretty quickly. Facebook social media. I do not have Instagram or Twitter. I just have Facebook. So again, you can always inbox me. You can add me as a friend at jhowasa. That's capital J, capital H-O. Wasa, capital W-A-H-S-A. Again, just simply search for me. Add me as a friend if you like. Inbox me if you have any questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. You can always listen and participate live right now here in class on this beautiful Thursday afternoon by simply calling in the Wassa studio at your learning center, or you can call in at home as well, or call in from any other places of place unknown where you're at and still listen. So again, you can still be out of your community and still call in and listen. So again, there's no excuses for missing class as well. And again, if you have access to internet, a computer, a tablet, your phone or whatnot, make sure you download Smart Bridget, log on. That way you can see what I'm seeing in a little conference webinar style. Again, any review content can be found on my YouTube page, jhowasa, or on the archive page as well. So again, make sure you make note of that. Make sure you tune in live right now as we continue our learning. Alright, so before we get started with today's content entitled The Canadian Shame, lesson number 2, let's do a bit of review of what we talked about last class, which was Canada's contribution to the Second World War efforts at home and internationally as well. So again, if you have your textbook, look at this. I open up a textbook in this Smart Ink document. That way hopefully you can see it, and I think I can write on it too, if I'm not mistaken. Look at that. Look at that. So again, hopefully this helps you to follow along as well. But let's backtrack a little bit. Let's go back to our notes that I have created, that I have summarized, and hopefully make it easier for you to understand. But again, all this is in your textbook as well. So last class, what did we talk about? Well, our learning goals were, we learned about the causes and effects of the Second World War. Again, what caused it, and what were some of its impact that impacted countries around the world, and even us here in Canada. Then we also looked at Canada's contribution to the war efforts at home and internationally. Again, our learning goals are the direction where we are heading in terms of our learning. So it's what you are learning, it's what I am learning as we are learning together in this learning environment. Alright, so let's quickly review some of these main points. Again, we won't go into major details about what we talked about last class. Again, if you missed it, you can always go back and check it out on the archive page on our YouTube page. But if you have any specific questions in terms of any of these content, let me know. We can always take time to pause and go back and look at it in details as well because we have to just continue along with our course content. Alright, World War II. Well, we won't go into the major facts of how it started, but it all started with Hitler and all how he rose and came into power. He was the voice of reason. He thought that Germany can be big, powerful, strong again, and how it can restore its glory days as it before. Because after World War One, the Treaty of Versailles came into play, which basically limited Germany's power and really blamed them for all their hostility towards the cause of World War One. So Hitler, again, he was the voice of reason. He really wanted to influence its people, the Germans, and how he can change their lifestyle to be big and strong and powerful and to expand the empire once again. Again, it all falls under this political ideology of fascism, where it's one dictatorship under one person rule, where he pretty much oversees everything. So Hitler, fascism, the Nazi Party, they all were voted into power. People really bought into it. And again, he really used the Jews as a scapegoat for blaming them for all the bad things that happened prior, such as the Great Depression and unemployment wise. We won't get into how it started, but again, it pretty much started with Germany and Italy forming an alliance where the tag team went up with one another. So we got Hitler and Mussolini, and then they start to invade and enter all these different countries, and they didn't stop. So Britain and France declare war on Germany. It's pretty much how it really started in a little nutshell. Again, Canada, well, we came into play as well. We're definitely not left out. Again, what's different compared to World War One was that Canada declared war by ourselves. Okay, we were not necessarily under the influence of the British Empire, but we declared war by ourselves. We were not forced to go, but we say, hey, let's just go because the Great Depression left us with no jobs. Hence, there was pretty much nothing to do, so let's go into war. Arsenal of democracy. Well, this is pretty much the same thing as the home front, where a lot of our contribution not just happened on the battlefield, but took place at home as well. We produced weapons, food, other items for our troops overseas. Again, women were a major factor as well. Good job for them. They stepped up, took jobs from men in factories, and really made a name for themselves based on their gender. So again, women really did a lot of big impacts as well. Again, children got involved as well. Again, it was a huge collective effort, not just one person, not just a group of people, but everyone across Canada made a huge contribution to the war efforts. Again, going to war is not cheap. It costs about $1 million a day going to battle. Again, you add all that up for about 4 or 5 years. Again, do the math. It's a lot of money. Again, we need to have tanks, guns, weapons, food, equipment. Again, that needs to come from somewhere. Can't just buy it off the shelves, but we need to produce it at a fast rate. So again, all this took place back here in Canada. Mackenzie King, well, he was our prime minister during this time period. He did a lot for the people based on Unemployment Insurance Act, the Family Allowance Act, and the Victory Bonds. Basically, if you were unemployed and had a job prior, you can use the Unemployment Insurance Act to collect some money. With the Family Allowance Act, well, it's all about collecting baby bonus money. The more children you have in a household, the more money that you can get from the government to pay for basic necessities for a living, such as clothes, shelter, and food. And we got victory bonds as well. So that's what Mackenzie King did, so his name is pretty significant. One of our great prime minister. Again, you can debate that he was one of the best. Some may agree, some may disagree, but he's definitely up there in terms of greatest prime minister. Oh, then we looked at Camp X. Again, not a camp that we put up a tent, but Camp X took place here in Canada. It was a secret training commando institution where you learn secret tactics and codes and strategies for battles. Again, it's opened up in Canada near Oshawa. It opened up for only about 5 years, then it shut down. But again, it was a huge contribution that Canada did back in our homeland. And then we looked at a group of people known as the constituent objectors. They simply said, hey, no, we don't want to go to war based on deep personal reasons, ethical, religious, and moral beliefs. They simply didn't want to engage, and they refused any engagement. They were simply Mennonites, they were the big one, Amish, and Jehovah's Witnesses as well. Again, they made other contributions to war efforts, not necessarily on the battlefield and directly with war, but they did other aspects as well. So again, they just refused to have any engagement with war purposes. And then we looked at assignment number 4. I pretty much did half your assignment for you in class. So again, make sure you take some time to work on that assignment as well, and any other assignments as well. So going again back to your textbook, look at this. It all starts on page number 12 in your textbook. So again, I didn't create this textbook. It was already there even before my time. I didn't change any content, any information. Any additional information is added in class, not necessarily in your textbook. Again, same thing with your assignments and your workbook questions. Nothing has changed even before my time. Well, before my time, I didn't change anything. So again, this here talks about Hitler, the first chunk, about how it started, about how World War II started. Again, note any words that are key and highlighted in bold, such as this sentence right here, explaining how Canadians joined the Second World War and how the Great Depression would left them with no any jobs. So again, the arsenal of democracy can be found right here because it's highlighted in bold. You cannot miss it. And right below it, you have Camp X right here. It's on the same page, on page number 12. So again, make sure you go back to your textbook and make good reference to it. Mackenzie King right here. Again, same picture that I use pretty much. It talks about his contribution, and that continues on to the next page on page number 13. On the top of page number 13, you can see 1, Unemployment Insurance Act. 2, you can see the Family Allowance Act. And 3, you can see victory bonds. Your assignment number 4 asks for these questions. This is where you can find it. It's highlighted. You cannot miss it. Again, make sure you go back and use that as well. And at the bottom, you can see where it talks about the constituent objectors. So again, all these points are in your textbook as well. So again, make sure you go back and refer to it. So that what's happened last class. So let's fast forward to today. Again, we're starting pretty much where we left off. We're still looking at Canada during the Second World War. We're starting at the bottom, page number 13. For any of those who want to follow along as well. So let's get started with today's class, the Canadian Shame, lesson number 2. let's get to our beautiful learning goals to see where we are heading in terms of our learning on this beautiful afternoon. One, we're learning about the mistreatment of Japanese Canadians. Again, Japanese Canadians were a huge target group during this time period, and we'll see what kind of mistreatment they had to overcome. Was it small factor? Was it big factors? We'll find out very, very shortly. We'll learn about the effects of the Holocaust. Again, a big, dark period in world history. Again, nothing really positive came out of the Holocaust, but we'll learn about the impact that the Holocaust had prior and before as well. And we'll wrap things up by we'll be learning the events that led to the ending of World War II. It pretty much started with one main event, and then all these dominoes fell and led to the conclusion of World War II, and simply the defeat of Hitler and his Nazi party. So that's where we are heading today. Again, not a huge lesson, but a very interesting lesson as well. And again, feel free to ask any questions, comments, share your thoughts. Again, as you work on your assignments, if you have any difficulties, give me a shout. I'm here to help you. Again, you need to at least attempt all questions on your assignment before I can give you the green light to write your test. So again, just try your best, do your work. Again, just let me know so that I know that you're progressing well and that you're able to do the questions on the test. Alright, so we're going to start the class off with a bit of background content, and then we'll zip through looking at Japanese Canadians. So, the United States, well, where were these guys? Our neighbors down south, where were they? Were they in the war? Not until this point. The Axis power. Again, it's not a group of countries where they form an alliance, not a tag team, where they partner with Germany, Italy, but they add in Japan as well. Okay, so again, they call themselves the Axis power. Again, it already had Germany, Hitler, Italy with Mussolini, but now they added in Japan as well. The United States, well, they were not necessarily part of this war yet. They were neutral. They didn't support anyone. They didn't support the Axis power. They didn't support Britain or France or Canada. They just simply, hey, let's just watch on and see what plays out. However, the United States did provide supplies and aids to Britain, but they started to cut off ties with Japan. So again, a little controversy going on right here. Even though the United States are not necessarily a part of it, they were neutral, but they were in a way helping Britain with supplies and aids. Pearl Harbor, well, this is not a Canadian history. Again, this is not an American history class, but again, I thought it was significant to quickly add in this slide. For again, all those Americans, American history, you'll always see Pearl Harbor as it was part of the Second World War. So basically, Pearl Harbor, just to quickly summarize it up, Japan did a surprise attack on the United States where they blew up this Navy battle vessel that the United States had. It was a message sent to the United States and they caught them off guard. It was supposed to stop the United States from entering the war, but nope, that did not happen. It pretty much made them super angry. So the United States woke up and simply declared war on Japan. And now Germany declared war on the United States since Germany had Japan's back. So again, chaos after chaos. That's how the United States came involved. So again, we can always look more in depth into Pearl Harbor and the background content of it, but that pretty much sums it all up in terms of how they came into play as well. So the United States, welcome to the Second World War. All right, going back to Canada, looking at Canadian history. With the effects of Pearl Harbor Canadian government became suspicious on not only the Germans, not only the Italians, but also on the Japanese as well. So again, a lot of suspicious eyebrow raised that was going on as well. We thought that they would become spies and eventually cross the Pacific and attack Canada. So again, because of all this fear and not necessarily a threat, but just fear of the unknown, we have suspicion on Germany's, Italian, but mainly the Japanese Canadians, because we don't know what they were up to. Are they on our side or not on their side? Are we going to be attacked? Is Pearl Harbor going to happen to Canada? We do not know. Hence why we had this suspicion about Japanese Canadians. So, what happened? What happened to Japanese Canadian? Well, one thing was a major theme, and that was racism. Okay, racism. Again, we defined it before. Again, racism is pretty much treating a population differently based on their socially constructed values. Okay, that's treating a particular group of people based on their appearance, culture, social economic status differently. That's racism. So again, it's not a part of equity or equality. We're all equal, but we're treating them differently. So one, racism was a big factor that Japanese Canadians had to overcome. Okay. It also happened to other groups as well. Chinese, Asian, other First Nation, but a lot of it had to do with Japanese Canadian. So some of their unfair treatment were that they had to move from the West Coast and live inland from the BC. Husbands and family members were separated from one another. So again, that created disperse and isolation within family members. Government really took all the properties away, and it really was an unfair time. And because of all of this, the Canadian government didn't really apologize for their actions until 1980s. So in your textbook, there's a little article called "The Silence is Broken" on this page right here, on page 15 in your textbook. The silence is broken. This little article pretty much sums up a person's account of how they were mistreated because of their race, because of Japanese Canadian during the Second World War. So again, we're not going to read it right now in class, but again, make sure you go back and look on page 15 in your textbook and check that one out. Well, class, during my studies, I came across a pretty neat little article. Well, not necessarily an article, but a little first person account by no other than David Suzuki. There is a picture in your textbook on the bottom, page 14, about David Suzuki as well. It doesn't really talk about how he had to overcome what would happen due to Japanese Canadian. He's Canadian, he's Japanese Canadian, but his parents had to really overcome a lot of these challenges. So in his autobiography that I came across during my studies, which I happen to be able to find online as well, which looks something like this. So again, David Suzuki, his autobiography, his first chapter entitled My Happy Childhood in Racist British Columbia. It is the first person narrative of a personal historical reflection where David Suzuki discussed the challenges and struggles that he and his family had to overcome and that he's seen during his childhood. So again, it's a neat little chapter on his personal autobiography that I came across in my studies. It pretty much sums up how he had to overcome racism because of Pearl Harbor, how his father had to change his haircut so that he looked more non-Japanese Canadian. He also talked about how his father demonstrated trustworthiness to the Canadians by working on the Trans-Canada Highway, but that did not really work. He also talked about how Japanese Canadians were put into internment camps as they were seen as a threat to society. So again, a really neat little article, but it just really talked about how he and his family had to overcome these challenges and struggles. Again, a lot of racism came into play because of the War Measures Act. Again, a lot of inequality factors came into play. So again, neat little article chapter from David Suzuki that I wanted to share with the class. So again, if you wanted to read it and you have time, check it out. I posted the link on here. You can always copy and paste that, or you can simply Google David Suzuki, the autobiography, and you can read about his first chapter entitled My Happy Childhood in Racist British Columbia. All this related to the main theme that I wanted to emphasize for today's class, and that is anti-Semitism. Okay, I mentioned this phrase a few times last class, but this is the main theme that I want to focus on today. Anti-Semitism, again, is a part of, it was just a part of mainstream society back then. It was a global ideology where a lot of people pointed hatred towards the Jewish people or any other nationalities that were not supposed to be the norm. Okay, so again, it was not just the Jews or the Japanese Canadians or racism, but again, any other nationalities were subjected to anti-Semitism. Basically, a lot of hate, a lot of racism came into play. This is not new. This is not just came out during the Second World War, but prior to all this, there are tons of evidence and historical facts that demonstrate that anti-Semitism was a factor prior to all this. So this is not something that's new, and some of this can even be seen as today. So again, anti-Semitism, where we point hate, point fingers, a lot of racism towards a particular group or ethnic origin. But going back to the Jewish population, again, Hitler and the Nazi Party used them as scapegoats, where they really pointed blame and wanted to point a finger at somebody, and they had to point it at the Jews. So under Nazi rule, anti-Semitism became a state policy. Okay, it's supposed to be a letter Y. Sorry about that. So state policy, where it was allowed to be hateful and unfair towards the Jewish population people. So for example, after 1933, all Jews in Germany had to wear a yellow star on their shirt, on the chest, to indicate that they were Jews. Again, is that fair, class? I think that's fair. What happens if you had to wear a yellow star on your shirt everywhere you went, or if you had to wear like a particular hat or shirt everywhere that you went? This was the law back then. Okay, this was the law under Nazi rule. So again, anti-Semitism, a lot of hate really pointed towards the Jewish population, not just in Germany, but also here in Canada as well. So when Jewish people tried to immigrate to Canada back then, Canada simply said no. Okay, we said no. We did not allow any Jewish people come into Canada. The official response for Jewish looking to come to Canada back then were, unfortunately, and I quote, unfortunately, they'll be greatly sympathized with your circumstance. At present, Canada is not admitting Jews. Please try another country, end quote. Again, is that fair? Some may argue yes or no, but again, a lot of this treatment where we didn't allow any Jews to immigrate to Canada. Again, a lot of this theme you can see going on to today, what's going on. So very, very similar. All this is not just new. You can see this as history repeating itself today almost. So basically, we can learn. So basically, we can learn what happened in the past, apply it today, and even though it's still going on today, we can make those changes and have a better equality society. So going back to your textbook again, since I have it open up, at the bottom of page 13, it talks about the attacks of Pearl Harbor. Again, how the United States got involved. Again, that's why I included it. It also talked about, as you scroll down to the next paragraph, it talked about BC. And it also talked about how they were mistreated. It also talked about all their internment camps and their lived experience. It also gave the example of David Suzuki as well. And it also followed on to the next page, page 15, where it talks about this little article entitled "The Silence is Broken." So again, that all talked about Japanese Canadian and whatnot. But as you scrolled on to the next page, on a page of page 16, it talks about a different theme. It also talked about the Holocaust. So, what was the Holocaust? Again, pretty well-known event that took place not just in terms of Canadian history, but world history. So let's go and check that out and learn about the Holocaust and see what it was all about. The Holocaust was an event where Hitler, the Nazi Party, and the Germans tried to eliminate all of the Jews in their countries and pretty much around the world. It also happened to gypsies and homosexualities as well, but pretty much tried to eliminate and killed and wipe out all the Jewish population. In other words, it was just a massive genocide. Okay, it was a massive genocide that really took place. We know and we learned that Hitler and the Nazi Party saw the Jews as a threat to their society simply because of their faith and their belief as being Jewish. All their properties were confiscated and taken away. They were simply rounded up, put into internment camps, and eventually killed and murdered by gas chamber or other means as well. But they were all eventually killed. They started off with the weak and unknown, the elders, and eventually made the way across. So starvation, physical mistreatment was another factor how they died. In the end, 6 million Jewish were killed in this mass murder or this genocide, as you want to call it. A lot of this was not known until after the Second World War. So the Holocaust was like top secret. It was kept undercover. Not many people knew about it. Not many people had seen it, but it took place. It really was not discovered until after the war. So again, not a happy moment in world history where this took place. The outcome of the Holocaust were a lot of the survivors had misplaced family members, misplaced population, hence why they had to go somewhere else. So again, a lot of family members were displaced because of this. There were also psychological impacts because of the survivor due to the survivors as well, or of the survivors. They suffered from long-term effects such as nightmares and depression. These survivors from the Holocaust, not all, but some suffer from mental breakdowns. And they even thought about suicide had remained an option for them, for those who felt that they could no longer live with the guilt of surviving their Holocaust, of the Holocaust. Some survivors even started to question their faith and the tradition due to the Holocaust, and there were some who were even angry at God for making this all happen. So again, not just past effect, but present long-term effect that came out of the Holocaust as well. So again, like I said, a dark period in world history. 6 million were killed because of the Holocaust. The conclusion of World War II. Again, this falls on to the next page. So again, if you go back to your textbook, on the top of page 16, it talks about the Holocaust. And the paragraph below it, it talks about what happened to end World War II. So how did World War II wrap up? Well, it took place like this. 1944, D-Day. D-Day took place where all the Allies landed in France, which is Canada, Britain, and France. We landed, we sent our troops, and we started to push back the German troops. So we started to make our move, started to push back the Germans, and went from there. Again, D-Day was a big event. Thousands and thousands of our Allied troops landed, and we started to make our strategic strategy moves into pushing back the Germans. A year later, 1945, VE Day took place, where the Allies invaded Germany, and again started to make our move as well. Hitler started to sense he was going to be defeated, so one, he committed suicide, and two, a week later, the Nazi Party surrendered. And because of that, war was over. Boom, victory went to Britain and the United States. France won, Canada won, we all won because of this. Again, like I mentioned, after the conclusion of World War II, that's where we started to liberate all the Jews and found out all the facts from the Holocaust. Even though the war with Germany was over, the United States was still fighting a war with Japan. I think this took place several weeks afterwards. So what happened was that not one, but two atomic bomb, okay, nuclear weapon, first time ever in history, was dropped on Hiroshima. Okay, one was dropped on Hiroshima, and a second one was dropped on Nagasaki. Again, all this killed thousands of Japanese instantly. Obviously, the first one didn't stop them, so the second one was dropped, and because of that, Japan finally surrendered. And after all that, the Second World War was finally over. It was over. So that's how all these series of events took place and ended the Second World War. Again, we won't go into great details about all these events, but all these events took place and how it concluded the Second World War. Alright, let's pause, let's stop, let's put our pencils down, let's debrief for a second, and let's regain our thoughts. So let's reflect back a little bit, alright class? Let's reflect back a bit. I call this class the Canadian Shame for a reason, actually. So when looking at Canadian history or any history at all that matters, we need to take into account the good side and the bad side. So the Canadian Shame, obviously us Canadians, we were not great towards one, Jews, and two, the Japanese Canadians. Canadian attitude towards other ethnicity was not always admirable. We had to accept our nation's responsibility towards the Jews, Japanese Canadians, and other race during World War II. Again, a lot of racism, mistreatment took place. Again, we had to take onus and responsibility for our action. So again, shame on us for that. However, on the good side, the secret side, not all contributions that we made were on the battlefield. Canadians can be proud of their contribution made by Camp X as a part of the Second World War efforts. So again, high five for us, good job for us for making that contribution. Do you see where I'm getting here, class? So the significance that I really want to point out was that as historians, and as a history major, as I explore all these topics during my studies, we must remember to keep all aspects of history alive, the good and the bad. Okay, we cannot just sit here and talk about all of Canada's contribution, all the good stuff, but we have to keep in mind aspects of the negative side as well. With the good and the bad aspect, we get a whole picture of Canadian history and a bit of world history as well. So, again, keep that in mind as you continue to look at history. All right, so that's that. Again, technically, assignment number 5 is super short, nothing long. So let's quickly go over these questions before we wrap up the day. Assignment number 5 is out of 10 marks. Again, fairly straightforward assignment. Again, like always, class, make sure you go back before you submit anything to me. Check for spelling, grammar, punctuation. Make sure everything is spelled right. Grammar. Make sure it's in sentences. Make sure it's tip-top tape shape before you submit anything. Okay, I want all the best quality work. Okay. So again, make sure you do put some time and effort into it, and make sure it's good work as well. And all that will pay off in the long run. Question number 1, why did Canadian government focus its attention on Japanese citizens after the bombing of Pearl Harbor? So what did we do? What do we suspect from Japanese Canadians or Japanese citizens because of Pearl Harbor? Think about becoming spies. Question number 2, give some details, specific facts about the mistreatment Japanese Canadians had to endure from the Canadian government following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. In other words, what did they have to do? What challenges that they had to overcome? Or mistreatment that they face is what the question is asking. Question 3, what was the Holocaust? Again, straightforward. I don't need huge details, but simply outline the cause of the Holocaust. And question number 3, outline the events from 1944 to 1945 that brought to the conclusion and end of the Second World War. So pretty much talking about V-Day, VE Day, D-Day, and the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So pretty straightforward. Again, all this in the textbook. Make use of it. Make note of it. I highlighted it. Again, you shouldn't have any problems going through all this. Again, some of us may have already completed this assignment, which is fantastic. And some of us may still be working on it. Again, none of this is difficult. All you have to do is put a little bit of time and effort into it, and you can get it done. I know you can. Again, I'm here to help if you have any questions or need any help. Again, just let me know. I'll spend that time. I'll do what I can to make sure you answer these questions and make sure that you're able to answer questions on your final test. Okay? So I'll stay online for a few more minutes live in class. Give the class a bit of time to work on these questions. If anyone decides to call in last minute, that's okay too. I don't mind if students come in late to work on these questions as well. Next week, what are we doing next week? What are we looking at next week? Well, we're going to look at the 1950s and 1960s. We will explore what happened after the Second World War, what came out of it, what new policies and political factors that came out of the Second World War, and we'll start to look at the 60s in terms of what went on with that and what peacekeeping defense organizations that emerged from the Second World War as we transition to looking at the 1960s. So again, a pretty short lesson again for on Tuesday. I'll try to plug in something there to fill some time. We might do a bit of review. I might add something different. We might add in a little music break. Who knows? But if class want to hear a little music break, just let me know. You can always take a 5-minute pause from class, pop on some tunes, listen to something, and then we can gain back focus as well. So again, class, like always, please continue to work on assignments. Again, I know you can do it. Don't be discouraged. Just work on it. It shouldn't take you that long. Again, some of these assignments are longer than others. Again, some may take you 15 minutes. Some may take you half an hour. Some may take you more than an hour. That's okay too. Okay? It all varies. Some are longer, some are shorter than others. We all learn differently, have different styles, which is all okay too. But again, none of it should technically take us that long. So for example, this assignment, assignment number 5, I would say it should take you about half an hour or so. Okay? 4 questions, answer them in details and sensitive. Should take you no more than half an hour to complete. So again, that's all you need, okay, class? About 15, 20, half an hour to complete the assignment. Boom, done. Get it to me, and then we can progress, all right? All right, good stuff, everyone. Again, thanks so much for joining me live here at the Watchtower Studio on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course, PLAR, History and Geography. I will be back here live again, as always, on Tuesday, 4 p.m. local time, and we will continue our learning. On that, enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday. Bye, everyone.